On what was supposed to be a joyful spring day, 28-year-old Natalie Kerns gripped the steering wheel of her weathered Toyota sedan, her knuckles whitening with every curve of the winding Oregon coastline road. The highway, lined with cliffs and misty pines, unspooled ahead like a gray ribbon, guiding her toward a place she had never imagined herself returning to. A remote fishing dock near Eden Cove, where a new discovery had just shattered the stagnation of the last excruciating 2 months. Her phone, cradled in the cup holder and synced to the car speakers, rang out with the deep, professional voice of Detective Samuel Darrow, the man who had anchored the chaotic investigation since day one. "Ms. Kerns," he said, urgency rippling beneath his composed tone, "you need to get here as soon as you can. A local fisherman hauled something out of the water. We believe it may be connected to your students." "I'm already on the road," Natalie replied, her voice far more stable than she felt. "What did he find?" There was a pause. Then Darrow's voice came back, quieter, grim. "A plastic sack. Several backpacks. Children's. They were weighed down with rocks. Found near the shoreline south of the cove. We need you to identify them." Natalie's breath caught in her throat. The school bags. The brightly colored, unmistakable backpacks from Eden Hill Elementary. "I know those bags," she whispered. "Each kindergarten student gets one. It's tradition. Different colors, so we can keep track of them." "We'll need confirmation," the detective said. "My team and I are en route as well. Should be there in an hour." "I'll be there before you," Natalie promised, pressing harder on the gas pedal. As the car gained speed, her eyes drifted briefly to the photo clipped to her sun visor, a snapshot taken just hours before her world imploded. 15 children beamed at the camera in their vibrant backpacks, flanked on one side by Miss Eleanor Bryce, her tight auburn curls tossed by a breeze, and on the other by Coach Lucas Meyer, tall, athletic, the kind of man who made kids feel invincible just by his presence. Natalie stood in the middle of the frame, her smile genuine, unaware that this would be the last picture ever taken of that group together. The field trip to Willow Pines Farm on the outskirts of Eden Hill had been planned as the highlight of the kindergarten year, a reward before summer vacation, a chance for the children to pet goats, learn about vegetables, enjoy the sunshine. Instead, it had become the center of a nightmare. 17 people, including her 2 colleagues and every child under her care, had simply vanished. No trace, no evidence, just an empty field and a silent barn. Natalie had been inside the farmhouse finalizing payment paperwork with the owner, Mr. Conrad Bellamy, when the others walked off toward the pumpkin patch. When she emerged half an hour later, they were gone, completely and utterly gone. The panic had started slowly, first confusion, then disbelief, then screaming for names, then running across the empty fields like a ghost chasing shadows. Police had arrived within hours. Search dogs, helicopters, volunteers, the National Guard, but nothing had ever come back. And for 63 days, Natalie had lived in that vacuum of horror. Her name dragged through the news, her job suspended, parents screaming at her across parking lots. And now, finally, something. She didn't stop for gas despite her tank dropping below a quarter. She didn't pause to eat or even breathe properly. Her only focus was Eden Cove. When she arrived, the small fishing harbor was shrouded in gray sea mist. Patrol cars lined the dockside. Police tape fluttered in the cold breeze. The tang of salt and diesel filled her lungs as she parked haphazardly and rushed toward the crowd of uniforms. Seagulls circled above, crying into the pale sky. Detective Darrow spotted her and gave a subtle nod, waving her toward a modest fishing vessel docked nearby. Beside it stood a weathered man in his early 60s, speaking quietly with an officer. "Ms. Kerns," Darrow greeted her. "This is Captain Owen Buckner." He found the bag. The man turned toward her. His leathery face was carved with lines from years at sea. He removed his cap. "Ma'am, I'm real sorry for what you're going through. I just dropped my nets this morning, out beyond the southern reef. Something snagged my gear. When I pulled it up, well," he gestured toward the deck, where a large black plastic trash bag sat, glistening with salt water. "May I?" Natalie asked, her voice cracking. The detective offered a pair of latex gloves. "We've documented everything, but we need your visual confirmation." Natalie stepped onto the boat, the wooden planks creaking beneath her boots. She approached the sack with a cautious reverence, as though it might hold ghosts. Her gloved fingers trembled as she unsealed the top and peered inside. 6 backpacks. Red, blue, yellow, green, purple, pink. Bright despite the seawater. Intact. Vibrant. She reached for the blue one, unzipped it carefully. Inside, dry enough to read, was a name tag sewn in black thread. Elias Kim. "This one belonged to Elias," she said, holding the label toward Darrow. Her throat tightened. "He always picked the blue one. Said it made him feel like a superhero." The detective nodded solemnly. One by one, Natalie examined the remaining bags. Each one belonged to her class. Sophia Rivera, Aiden Moss, Priya Singh, Caleb Denton, Lucia Hart. "These are all ours," she confirmed. "From our school." Darrow leaned closer, inspecting the soak straps. "They're too clean to have been in the water long. I'd say a few days. Maybe 3. Captain Buckner nodded. "And those rocks they used? Not nearly heavy enough. They didn't anchor it properly. That bag's been drifting." "Which means someone dumped it recently," Darrow added, frowning. "Not the day of the disappearance." Natalie turned to the horizon, her eyes scanning the gray waves. "Do you think there are more out there?" "Possibly," he said. "Or maybe someone intended this one to be found." The implication hung in the sea air like fog. Natalie closed the bag, her hands trembling. "What does this mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Were they taken?" "If they'd been killed," the detective said, "we would have found bodies. This points to kidnapping." "But by who?" she asked. "Eleanor and Lucas were with them. They wouldn't hurt the kids." "Or they were taken too," Darrow replied grimly. "We're reopening all theories, including third-party involvement. There's a lot of traffic through Eden Hill. Remote, vulnerable. Too many unknowns." He looked at her gravely. "And that means we're also revisiting everyone's statements, including yours." Natalie's breath caught. "What?" "You weren't with the group when they vanished," he said. "We need to be thorough. That means examining all communications, your phone, your emails, everything." She wanted to scream, to protest. But instead, she nodded. "Fine. I have nothing to hide." The detective signaled an officer. "Sergeant Colton will accompany you back to the station." As Natalie stepped off the boat, the weight of suspicion returned, heavy and suffocating. Behind her, 6 backpacks waited in plastic evidence bins, silent witnesses to whatever had happened to her students. Somewhere out in the gray haze of ocean and fog, 15 children were missing. But now, finally, the tide was starting to shift. Natalie Kerns barely registered the ride back to the station. The sun was climbing above the gray line of the sea as she sat behind the wheel of her car, Sergeant Colton in the passenger seat beside her. His uniform was crisp, his demeanor professional and unreadable, but she could feel the silent weight of suspicion between them like a third presence in the car. The photograph still dangled from her visor. 15 bright little faces framed by green fields and sunshine. Her gaze flicked toward it as the coastline receded in the rearview mirror. The backpacks. 6 of them, and not one showing signs of long-term submersion. Whoever had dumped them had done it recently. That meant someone had held on to them, kept them all this time. But why release them now? What did it mean? This is ridiculous, she muttered aloud, gripping the steering wheel tighter. If I had something to do with their disappearance, why would I come back? Why wouldn't I just vanish too? Sergeant Colton didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was neutral. Ma'am, we're just following protocol. You're the last adult who saw the children. It's standard. Natalie huffed out a breath. I've done nothing but cooperate. I handed over my phone and laptop 3 times already. They even checked my home. We appreciate your cooperation, Colton said. It helps the process. She nodded, but her hands were still shaking when they pulled into the police station's lot. She followed Colton through the familiar glass doors, past the buzzing front desk, and down a corridor that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old coffee. Detective Darrow was already waiting in interview room B, a plain room with a metal table and 2 chairs. He looked tired. Gray stubble shadowed his jaw, and his dark eyes were rimmed with fatigue. Still, he stood as she entered, gesturing for her to sit. Thank you for coming in again, Miss Kerns, he said, his voice even. I know this isn't easy. Let's just get over with, Natalie said, placing her phone, tablet, and a small laptop onto the table. My passwords are the same, my birthday and my mother's maiden name. You've used them before. Darrow nodded and scribbled something on a yellow legal pad. This is just a formality now that we have new evidence. We need to retrace everything. I'd like you to walk me through that day one more time. Natalie closed her eyes for a moment, grounding herself in memory. We arrived at Willow Pines Farm at 9:30 a.m. The kids were excited. Some of them had never been to a farm before. Eleanor and Coach Meyer offered to take the children to the corn maze and the petting area. I went with Mr. Bellamy to finalize the paperwork for the visit. We had agreed on a fee, and I needed a signature for the district's records. How long were you away from the group? 30, maybe 40 minutes, Natalie answered. We talked longer than expected. Mr. Bellamy started telling me about the farm struggles, how his yields had been poor the last 2 seasons, and how he was relying more on these educational trips. I was trying to be polite, but I was also anxious to get back. Darrow was writing again. When you returned, what did you see? Nothing, she said, her voice hollow. The field was empty. I thought maybe they'd moved to the orchard, but then Mr. Bellamy called for his staff, and no one had seen the group, except for Travis Rowland. Bellamy's longtime ranch hand, Darrow prompted. Yes. He said he was giving the kids a tour, but had left briefly to grab supplies from the storage barn. When he got back, everyone was gone. Darrow looked up. And you didn't hear anything unusual? Natalie shook her head. Nothing. The office faces away from the fields. It was quiet. No screams, no noise. Nothing at all. The detective watched her for a long moment. You understand how this looks, Ms. Kerns. You were the only adult not present when the group disappeared. The only one unaccounted for during that crucial window. I didn't plan this, Natalie snapped, her composure cracking. I didn't do anything wrong. I lost them. All of them. And the district fired me. No severance. No hearing. My apartment lease was terminated. Everyone in Eden Hill blames me. I live on canned soup and guilt. Darrow's expression softened slightly. I understand this has been devastating, but we have to be thorough. The bags changed the scope of the investigation. It's not a cold case anymore. There's movement, possibly a trail. As he spoke, a younger officer entered and whispered something into Darrow's ear. The detective's eyes narrowed before he turned back to Natalie. We're going to run a new scan on your digital accounts. Please wait here. Help yourself to coffee if you like. Left alone in the small sterile room, Natalie sat with her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. 8 weeks. 8 weeks of waiting, of being blamed, of walking by bedrooms filled with unopened toys and untouched lunchboxes. 15 children. And now she had held 6 of their backpacks in her hands. She pressed her hands against her face, trying to remember every tiny detail from that day. Had she missed something? A strange noise? A vehicle? Anything? The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly. After nearly an hour, Darrow returned. He looked neither pleased nor disappointed, just focused. "Your records are clean," he said. "No deleted messages, no suspicious activity. Everything checks out." Natalie exhaled slowly, the tension easing from her shoulders slightly. "So I can go?" "Yes," Darrow said, "but I'm asking you not to leave town. We'll be returning to the farm tomorrow to re-examine the area. With what we now know, every detail counts." "You'll keep me informed?" she asked. "Of course," he said. "And for what it's worth, you've been more cooperative than most would be in your situation." Natalie stood, gathering her things with shaky hands. "Those kids, they were like my family. I just want them back." Darrow nodded and escorted her out. The sun was higher now, bright and unforgiving. She stepped into the light and paused at the edge of the station steps, momentarily unsure of where to go. Her apartment would be waiting, dark and silent as always. But something inside her rebelled at the thought of going back. She wasn't done. She couldn't be done. Instead of heading home, Natalie got back in her car and turned toward Eden Hill, toward the farm. She knew the detective planned to return tomorrow, but she needed to see it again now, alone. She needed to walk the grounds and try to piece together what had gone so horribly wrong. The drive from the station to the farm took just under an hour. The landscape slowly shifted from suburban strip malls and gas stations to wide open pastures and rolling fields dotted with grazing cattle. As the familiar red barn came into view, Natalie's stomach clenched. Nothing had changed. The weathered wooden sign reading Willow Pines Farm Estate 1963 still hung crooked above the gate. She turned onto the gravel drive, her tires crunching over the dry stones, and parked near the main house. The farm was quiet. No tours. No school buses. Just a sleepy, sun-drenched field where children had once laughed. She approached the farmhouse and knocked. A few moments later, Conrad Bellamy opened the door, surprise flickering across his lined face. "Ms. Kerns," he said, stepping aside. "Didn't expect to see you today." "Sorry to drop in," she said. I needed to come back. There's been a new development." Bellamy nodded slowly. "Yeah, the detective called. Said they found some backpacks." 6, Natalie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They were ours. Still bright. Weighted with rocks." Bellamy's weathered face went pale. "My God. Come in, please." She followed him into the dim, cool farmhouse, still smelling faintly of hay and coffee. The same photographs still adorned the walls, sepia-toned memories of a family operation now tarnished by loss. Bellamy offered her a seat at the kitchen table. "Does this mean they think it's a kidnapping?" she said, her hands clasped tightly, "either by Eleanor and Lucas or someone else." Before Bellamy could respond, a voice came from the next room. "Sir, I need to speak with you about the West Field." Travis Rowland stepped into view, wiping his hands on a rag. When he saw Natalie, his expression tightened, guarded. "Ms. Kerns is here about the investigation," Bellamy said. Travis nodded once, but his eyes never left Natalie. Something about his posture, his stillness, prickled at her. "I was hoping to walk around again," she said. "Just retrace our steps." Bellamy hesitated, then nodded. "I'll have Mary show you. She knows the layout." He turned toward the back door and called out for the young farmhand. Moments later, a slender woman with blonde braids appeared, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Mary," Bellamy said, "would you mind showing Miss Kerns around the farm? She wants to revisit the area from the field trip." Mary nodded, curiosity flickering in her gaze. "Of course. Right this way, ma'am." Natalie followed, the sun already beating down harder than before. As she stepped into the open yard, she felt the weight of history pressing against her, every blade of grass a witness, every shadow a potential clue. She was back, and this time she intended to look closer, much closer. The midday sun bore down mercilessly as Natalie Kerns walked beside Mary through the dust-coated fields of Willow Pines Farm, her boots crunching over the dry earth. The air smelled of hay, faint manure, and summer heat. Grasshoppers leapt out of the way with every step. "We arrived by school bus," Natalie said aloud, her mind replaying the tragic day like a scratch tape. "The kids got out over there near the welcome sign. Eleanor and Coach Meyer took them toward the cornfields, while I went with Mr. Bellamy to the office. That was the last time I saw them." Mary, a recent hire who hadn't been at the farm during the field trip, nodded thoughtfully. "I wasn't working that day, but I've heard plenty about it. It's haunted the farm ever since. Every season that passes, people talk less, but no one forgets." Natalie's throat tightened. They shouldn't. 15 children don't just vanish. They moved past the open pasture toward the tall rows of corn, stalks whispering against each other in the wind. The narrow path between the plants led deeper into the maze where the kids had gone. "Did Travis say where he went when he left the group?" Natalie asked, glancing sideways. Mary pointed to a large structure beyond the cornfield. "That barn over there. It's where we keep a lot of the heavier equipment and promotional materials. Travis said he ran to grab something for the field demonstration." The barn stood weather-beaten and solid, a large padlock securing the front. The metal roof reflected the harsh sun, making Natalie squint. "Could we take a look inside?" Mary hesitated. "It's locked. Only Travis and Mr. Bellamy have keys. He doesn't like people poking around in there. Still, I want to see it. Something feels off." Together they circled the barn, and as they reached the far side, Natalie's eye caught on something near the bottom of the door, a small object protruding just enough to glint in the light. She knelt, brushing her fingers along the wood and extracting a colorful feather wedged beneath the door. It shimmered with iridescent hues of turquoise, gold, and emerald, unlike anything native to the Oregon region. "That's odd," Mary said, peering at the feather. "Never seen anything like that around here." "It's not local," Natalie said, studying the patterns. "I used to take the class birdwatching. I've never seen feathers like this on any North American species." She carefully placed it in her coat pocket. As she stood, her gaze was drawn to an overgrown trail that disappeared behind the barn, winding toward the edge of the property where brushland met desert. "What's that path?" "It's supposed to lead to an old maintenance station," Mary said. "We don't use it anymore. Just connects to the utility road and open land beyond. Not much back there." "Can we check it out?" "I suppose. But it's a bit of a walk, and it's getting hot." "Please. I don't know when I'll get another chance to be here alone." Reluctantly, Mary led the way, pushing through the tall weeds as they followed the trail. Sweat clung to Natalie's back as they walked. The trail opened up onto a dusty service road, hard-packed and cracked from years of sun exposure. Faint tire tracks wove through the dirt. "This is it," Mary said, wiping her brow. "It runs 3 miles to the highway. Suppliers sometimes use it to drop things off, quicker than looping around." Natalie crouched to examine the tracks. Something caught her eye, a dark stain running across the center of the road. "What's this?" The soil's darker here. Mary shrugged. Probably oil. Or mud from a truck. It happens. Natalie stood, her eyes narrowing. It feels wrong. Before she could probe further, footsteps approached from behind, heavy and fast. Turning, she saw Travis Rowland emerging from the trail, his face shadowed by the brim of his cap. "You ladies are quite far from the main area," he said, voice even but laced with something harder. "Didn't realize the tour included restricted access." "Just retracing our route from that day," Natalie said, trying to sound casual. Travis's eyes flicked to the dark stain on the road, then back to her. "It's nearly 95 degrees. You should head back before you get heat stroke." Mary's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen. "Sorry, I need to get to the greenhouse. Something about a pressure valve." "Go ahead," Travis said. "I'll walk Miss Kerns back." Mary hesitated, casting Natalie a fleeting glance before jogging back through the cornfield. Natalie forced a smile. "You don't have to escort me." "Nonsense," Travis said, stepping beside her. "I insist." As they walked in tense silence, Natalie's heart pounded. Every step through the dusty cornfield felt like walking deeper into a trap. When they finally reached the main yard, the farmhouse loomed ahead like a fortress. Travis guided her into the kitchen, the cool air blasting from the AC a stark contrast to the oven outside. "Mr. Bellamy had to step out," he said. "Something with the feed shipment." He poured 2 glasses of iced coffee and placed one in front of her. "You've had quite a day." "Thanks," she said, accepting the drink with a nod. Her fingers instinctively brushed the feather in her pocket. "I found this earlier, stuck in the barn door." She placed it on the table. "Ever seen anything like it?" Travis's face didn't change, but his grip on his glass tightened slightly. "Must be from a migrating bird. We get odd ones through here sometimes." "Seems too exotic for Oregon," Natalie said. "I remember Coach Meyer showing the kids bird photos before the trip. I think he mentioned one like this, but not from around here." Travis shrugged. Nature's unpredictable. As he raised his glass, she noticed the flicker of blue light from his wristwatch. It jogged something in her memory. The shape. The band. "That's a nice watch," she said. "Where'd you get it?" Travis glanced down. "Market downtown. Nothing fancy." But Natalie's stomach twisted. She'd seen that model before. Weeks before the trip, Lucas Meyer had bragged about saving up for a durable waterproof watch with a signature blue backlight. And those shoes, white with blue stripes, were the exact ones Lucas always wore during PE classes. He'd worn them the morning of the trip. Travis saw her glance downward. "You okay?" "Just tired," she lied. "It's been a long day." The front door opened, and Mr. Bellamy returned, his arms full of receipts and boxes. "Ms. Kerns," he said, surprised. "Did they show you around all right?" "Yes, thank you," she said. "Travis and Mary were very helpful." "We were just chatting about birds," Travis added, lifting the feather. "Odd thing. Blew away, though." "Can I use your restroom before I leave?" Natalie asked. "Of course," Bellamy said. "Down the hall, under the stairs, next to Travis's office." Natalie walked down the hall slowly, her heart hammering. As she passed the door marked office, she noticed it was slightly ajar. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth. In July, she slipped inside, closed the door behind her. The fireplace was full of burning paper. She grabbed the poker and pulled out a singed sheet, barely readable. Ash crumbled at her feet. Turning to the desk, she found a stack of receipts. Flipping through them quickly, she found one dated 3 days after the field trip. It documented the delivery of a livestock crate to a private dock in Brookhaven Port. Her hands trembled as she folded the receipt and slid it into her pocket. She snapped a quick photo of it with her phone. Then she backed out of the room, into the bathroom. With shaking fingers, she texted the image and her location to Detective Darrow. Seconds passed like hours. She flushed the toilet to complete the illusion, then returned to the kitchen. "Thanks again," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "I should get going." Travis's eyes narrowed. "You've got something in your pocket," he said flatly. Natalie's blood turned cold. "Just my phone." Bellamy looked between them, confused. "You seem unsettled," Travis said, stepping closer. "Did you lose your way earlier?" "Just needed the restroom," she said, backing away. Her phone vibrated. A call from Darrow. She answered immediately. "Natalie," he said urgently, "where are you?" "Still at the farm," she whispered. "I found something. A receipt. Travis has Coach Meyer's watch and shoes. I'm sure of it." "Listen carefully," he said. "Get out now. We're sending a team to your location. Send me your live GPS. Don't let them corner you." Natalie looked up. Travis was watching her. She forced a smile. "Just a friend checking in. I should hit the road." "So soon?" Travis said. "Shame about that feather. Maybe I can find you another one in the barn." He placed a firm hand on her back. "Calme. It'll only take a minute." The weight of his touch wasn't friendly, it was final. Bellamy stood frozen. "Travis, what are you doing?" "Taking care of it," Travis said, and guided her toward the barn. Natalie Kerns felt the heat of the sun press down on her as Travis Rowland led her across the dusty yard toward the old barn, his grip firm on her upper arm under the guise of polite insistence. But she could feel the strength in his fingers, the tension hiding behind his practiced calm. The gravel crunched under their feet, and each step brought her closer to the structure that now loomed like a trap in plain sight. Mr. Bellamy followed a few paces behind, visibly unsure, his brows furrowed and his steps hesitant. "Travis, that's enough," he called out, voice strained. "Miss Kerns said she needs to leave." Travis didn't even glance back. "She just wants to see inside, Clay. She found that feather. Maybe she'll find another. Won't take long." Natalie's mind raced, her heart pounding so loudly it nearly drowned out the squawk of nearby crows. She considered making a break for it, but with Travis's grip and the distance to her car, she wasn't confident she'd get far. Detective Darrow's voice from earlier echoed in her ears. "Don't let them corner you." But she was already there. Travis pulled a heavy iron key from his pocket, undid the padlock with a deliberate click, and swung the barn door open with a long, rusty creak. A cool gust of air rushed out from the shadowed interior, smelling faintly of old wood, motor oil, and something deeper, animal musk, sharp and foreign. "After you," he said, gesturing inside. Natalie hesitated, praying for an intervention, a phone call, anything. But nothing came. Bellamy finally caught up, reaching for Travis's shoulder. "Don't do this," he muttered. "It's not what we planned." "She knows," Travis said quietly, not taking his eyes off Natalie. "She saw the receipt. She's not walking away." In that instant, before she could retreat, Travis shoved her hard into the barn. She stumbled forward, landing hard on the concrete floor, her palms scraping against the rough surface. She cried out, but was quickly silenced as Travis stormed in after her, slamming the door shut behind them. Bellamy entered too, reluctantly, casting nervous glances back toward the farmhouse. "Tie her up," Travis ordered, grabbing a leather strap from a nearby hook. "Use the rope from the corner." "This wasn't the deal," Bellamy said, his voice cracking. "We weren't supposed to hurt anyone." "Plans change," Travis snapped. "You want to go down with me? Then help or get out of my way." Bellamy hesitated, then obeyed. Together, they restrained Natalie, first her wrists, then her ankles, working in silence except for the occasional sound of tools clinking or feet shuffling on the floor. Natalie struggled and screamed through the gag they shoved into her mouth, her cries muffled and frantic. They lifted her into a large metal crate, similar to the ones she'd seen in the back of livestock trucks, and locked it shut. Travis yanked her phone from her pocket and pulled out the folded receipt she tried to conceal. "You were snooping," he hissed, waving the document in her face before crumpling it. "That was your mistake." The barn's dim interior came into sharper focus as her eyes adjusted. Along the walls were cages stacked and bolted, containing birds with bright plumage, reptiles with glassy eyes, and in one corner, what appeared to be a sedated leopard draped limply in its crate. Feathers, like the ones she'd found earlier, littered the floor. Near the back of the barn, half buried in hay, lay a small blue sneaker with a familiar cartoon dinosaur logo, Elias Kim's favorite shoes. She choked on a sob, realizing the truth. This place wasn't just a farm, it was a smuggling hub. Travis and Bellamy stood nearby, whispering heatedly. "The delivery truck is almost here," Travis said. "They'll take everything to the desert warehouse. We can't keep anything here with the cops coming tomorrow." "You want to send her too?" Bellamy asked. "Are you insane?" "She saw too much," Travis said coldly. "Tell them to take her. If she talks, we all go down. No loose ends." Minutes later, the growl of an approaching truck rumbled outside. Travis opened the barn doors, just enough to let the vehicle reverse in. The truck was unmarked, large and dusty, its paint sun-bleached from years of backroad deliveries. Men in plain clothes, work boots, jeans, and nondescript shirts, jumped out and began unloading empty cages and moving toward the ones already filled. Spanish echoed among them, fast and clipped. One pointed at Natalie's cage. "La mujer," he asked, surprised. "That wasn't part of the agreement." "Change of plans," Travis said, handing him a folded envelope stuffed with cash. "She's a liability." Quintana said to handle problems quietly. The man muttered under his breath, but gestured for the others to load Natalie into the truck. They lifted the cage with a hydraulic dolly, rolling her up the metal ramp and into the dark interior. Inside the truck, she saw other crates, some covered with tarps, others exposed, filled with rare birds, reptiles, and in one terrifying case, a tranquilized panther, its breath shallow and visible in the humid air. Natalie's cage was shoved against the far wall, bolted in place. The men returned to the barn for the remaining crates, working quickly. From her corner, she could hear snatches of conversation. "Quintana's not going to like this," one of the younger men said. "First the kids, now a teacher?" "The kids were hard enough," another replied. "Trying to move them out of the country wasn't the plan. Too risky. We buried the teachers in the desert. That was supposed to be the end of it." Natalie's heart skipped at the words. Eleanor and Lucas, dead. She struggled again, but the ropes were too tight. Sweat ran down her face as the doors slammed shut, locking her into darkness. The truck lurched into motion, bouncing over the dirt road as it left the farm behind. Time stretched and twisted as the vehicle hurtled down unpaved roads, the heat inside rising with every passing minute. Her vision blurred, her mind spun with fear and despair. Then, after what felt like hours, the truck slowed. Gravel crunched beneath the tires. The brakes squealed. The doors opened again to reveal a dimly lit warehouse, tucked deep into the desert, surrounded by nothing but sand and silence. The men unloaded the cages quickly, lining them against the walls. The older man in charge approached Natalie's crate and sighed. "This is a problem," he said, glancing at her. "We need to sedate her." "She already knows too much," someone muttered. "Just give her enough to keep her quiet." They retrieved a syringe and unlocked the cage. Despite her bonds, Natalie fought. She kicked one man in the chin, sending him staggering. "Mierda," he cursed, dropping the syringe, which shattered on the floor. "Careful, that stuff's expensive," the older man snapped. "We only have one more." They restrained her more tightly and returned with another dose. This time, they injected her successfully. The sedative burned as it spread through her veins. Her limbs went heavy, her thoughts clouded. But even through the haze, she heard the words that followed. "The kids are still at the shrimp plant, right?" "Yeah, Quintana said they'll try again next week. They're sedated, hidden in the basement. 13 still alive," someone added. "The other 2 didn't make it. The asthma girl died early on. The boy, he got hit by the truck." As her consciousness slipped away, Natalie clung to the only thought that mattered. They were alive. Not all, but some. 13 children. Still out there. Still waiting. Then the sirens came. Sharp, wailing, and urgent, growing louder by the second. Shouts. Footsteps. Doors thrown open. Flashlights sweeping through the warehouse. And then a voice, firm and familiar. "She's here. We've got her. Get the bolt cutters." Cold metal clanged. Hands lifted her gently. "She's alive. Get the medics now." Natalie tried to speak, to warn them, but the drug silenced her. Still, she heard enough to know Detective Darrow had found her. And maybe, just maybe, he would find the others too. Natalie Kerns floated in and out of awareness as cool desert air touched her skin, a sharp contrast to the suffocating heat of the smuggling truck's cargo hold. Her eyelids fluttered, her vision blurred, the aftermath of the tranquilizer still tugging at her thoughts like ocean tides. Voices surrounded her, some urgent, some clinical. The blare of sirens had faded, replaced by orders shouted between uniformed officers and EMTs, their boots crunching over gravel and broken concrete. She was placed gently in the back seat of a police cruiser, one door propped open for airflow. A paramedic crouched beside her, checking her pulse and lifting her eyelids with a small flashlight. "She's responding, but slow," he said. "We need to counteract whatever they used. Probably a wildlife sedative. Most of them are opioid-based." His partner nodded, already preparing an injection. "Naloxone should work. It's our best bet." A needle slid into her arm, followed by the warmth of the reversal agent spreading through her veins like fire through frost. For a moment, Natalie gasped, her chest rising sharply as her lungs remembered how to breathe. Her thoughts began to clear, piece by piece, like fog lifting from a mirror. "That's better," the paramedic said, relief in his voice. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" "Yes," Natalie rasped. I need Detective Darrow. Now." A uniformed officer leaned into the car window. "He's coordinating the search. We've got 4 suspects in custody, including the drivers." The truck was intercepted 10 miles out. "They're not talking yet." "The children," Natalie whispered, gripping the paramedic's sleeve with surprising strength. "Corpus Christi, an abandoned shrimp processing plant. They're there, sedated, waiting to be moved." The officer's face paled as he relayed her words into his radio, triggering a flurry of action. Within minutes, Detective Darrow appeared, eyes scanning her face for clarity. "Natalie," he said urgently, "did you say Corpus Christi?" "Yes," she nodded, her voice still shaky. "I overheard them. 13 are alive. The other 2," she couldn't finish the sentence. "We'll move now," Darrow said. "We've already got Port Authority contacts in that area. We'll coordinate a raid." He turned to the paramedics. "Get her stabilized and to the station. She's the key to this whole case." As the cruiser pulled away from the warehouse, Natalie watched through the slats of the window, her mind buzzing with adrenaline and grief. The children, 13, still alive. She'd heard them talk about it. The boy who died, struck by the truck, and the girl with asthma who didn't survive the stress of being taken. That left 13 souls trapped in a place no child should ever be. She leaned her head back, determined to stay awake, to be ready if Darrow needed more details. The drive to the station was long, the scenery a blur of dust, sky, and the rhythmic blip of her heart monitor. Once there, she was taken to a medical room adjacent to the main precinct, where a nurse inserted a second to help flush the remaining sedative from her system. "This will help your body metabolize the drug," the nurse explained. "You're lucky. If they'd given you the full dose, you might not have woken up." Natalie nodded, her voice still hoarse but stronger. "I need to speak with someone when you're ready," she said. "They need everything I know." "You'll have your chance," the nurse assured her. "For now, just rest." But Natalie didn't rest. She waited. Every tick of the wall clock felt like a drumbeat in her chest. Finally, a female officer entered the room, a tablet in hand and a small recording device clipped to her shirt. "Ms. Kerns, I'm Officer Laney. Do you feel up to giving a formal statement?" "Yes," Natalie said, pushing herself upright. "Please. I remember everything." For the next hour, she walked them through it all. The feather, the overgrown path behind the barn, the locked door, the receipt she'd found, the confrontation in the kitchen, and finally, the warehouse filled with exotic animals and whispered confessions about murdered teachers and trafficked children. Officer Laney typed rapidly, asking for clarification when needed, but mostly letting Natalie speak without interruption. By the end, her throat was raw, but her mind was clear. "You were incredibly brave," Laney said softly. "Most people would have panicked. You gathered evidence, stayed alert, survived being sedated." "I just want them home," Natalie whispered. "That's all I wanted." At that moment, another officer entered the room, her expression tense but charged with energy. "We've received an update from the field. The children have been located. Alive." Natalie's breath caught. "All of them." 13, the officer confirmed. They were found in the basement of an old shrimp processing facility just outside Corpus Christi Harbor. Malnourished and sedated, but alive. "Oh my God," Natalie said, tears welling in her eyes. "Are they okay?" They're being transported here now. EMS is on scene. They'll be checked for injuries and trauma, then reunited with their families." "What about the others?" she asked. "The two who didn't," Officer Laney nodded solemnly. "The scene matches what you described. One child died during the abduction. His injuries suggest he was struck by a vehicle. The other passed from complications related to asthma. Their identities are being confirmed. We'll notify the families directly." Natalie closed her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. Jalen and Mila. Sweet, eager Jalen, with his dinosaur obsession, and quiet, gentle Mila, who collected stickers and smiled shyly from the back of the class. Their absence carved a deep hole in her heart. "Do the parents know?" she asked. "They've been contacted. Many are already here at the station, waiting. We're keeping the children in a separate area until they've been fully examined." "Can I see them?" she asked. "They know me. I might help." Officer Laney smiled softly. "I'll ask. But first, let's get you unhooked from this and into something more comfortable." An hour later, dressed in clean clothes provided by the department and with her vitals stabilized, Natalie sat in a hallway chair just outside the family reunion room. She could hear murmurs, footsteps, and the occasional sob from within. Then a door opened. The first group of children walked in, surrounded by officers and social workers. Their steps were slow, cautious, their faces pale. But then, "Miss Kerns," a small voice called out. Natalie turned to see Elias Kim running toward her, his eyes lighting up with recognition. She dropped to her knees as he threw his arms around her neck. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." Other children soon followed, gathering around her, their small hands reaching out, their voices trembling. She hugged each one in turn, choking back tears as she reassured them. "You're going home," she said. "You're going to be okay." Behind her, Detective Darrow approached, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Kerns," he said gently, "we need to talk." She nodded, gently disengaging from the children and following him into a private room. "What happened?" she asked. "We found them, thanks to you," he said. "And we've arrested everyone involved, including Victor Quintana. He ran one of the largest wildlife smuggling networks in the Gulf. Bellamy has turned cooperative. Travis is facing multiple charges, including conspiracy, kidnapping, and accessory to murder. And the kids? We'll ensure they receive psychological support," Darrow promised. "Their families have already started reuniting. The healing will take time, but this was the turning point. You made it happen." Natalie stared at her hands, still shaking slightly. "I was just there. I saw things others didn't." "And you acted," he said, "when no one else would. That makes you the reason 13 children are alive right now." Outside the door, the voices of parents and children mingled, reunions bursting with joy, relief, and in some cases, unimaginable sorrow. Natalie sat quietly, listening, knowing this moment was only the beginning. The hallway outside the station's family reunion room was filled with a hum of muffled voices, the soft rustle of movement, and the steady beeping of medical monitors brought in for the freshly rescued children. Natalie Kerns sat on the bench, her fingers laced tightly in her lap, still trying to absorb the reality of the last few hours. The shock had worn off, but the emotional weight remained, heavy and aching behind her ribs. She had watched the children, 13 out of the original 15, be reunited with their families one by one. Some of the parents had rushed toward their children with open arms and sobs of relief, collapsing to their knees in joy. Others moved more cautiously, disbelief carved into their faces, as if afraid the moment would vanish if they blinked. A few, upon seeing Natalie, had paused, their expressions unreadable, memories of headlines and suspicion not yet erased by truth. She didn't blame them. She had been the one left behind, the one who hadn't been with the kids when they disappeared, the one everyone thought might have known more than she let on. Now their stares carried something different: confusion, hesitation, and in some, a glimmer of reluctant gratitude. She didn't need their thanks. She only cared about the children. As the last of the kids disappeared into the family rooms for medical checks and supervised conversations with their loved ones, Natalie was led back to the small private office where Detective Darrow waited. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, a tired look hanging from his eyes that matched her own. "We've finished processing the warehouse," he began, offering her a seat. There were over 30 crates of exotic animals, some legal, most not. "We've called in wildlife control and several federal agencies. The operation was bigger than we suspected." Natalie nodded slowly, absorbing every word. "What about the man in charge?" "The one they kept mentioning, Quintana." "Victor Quintana," Darrow confirmed. "He was arrested an hour ago at a rental property near Brownsville. Tried to burn documents when he saw us coming. He's in custody now. We've linked him to multiple smuggling operations across state lines, wildlife, antiquities, and now, sadly, human trafficking. He's not going anywhere." "And Bellamy?" she asked, her voice softer. "He's cooperating," Darrow said, his tone cautious. "He claims he never knew children would be involved, that the barn was only supposed to house animals. But when the abduction happened, when the kids saw the transport truck, things escalated. Bellamy panicked. He helped Travis because he thought it was too late to stop. He says he didn't know Travis was planning to sedate and hide them long term." Natalie's jaw tightened. "But he helped. He tied me up. He put me in that cage. And he'll face charges," Darrow assured her. "But his testimony might be useful in bringing down the rest of the network." She stared out the window, where the first rays of morning light were beginning to illuminate the streets. The sun touched the tops of parked police cars and cast long shadows along the sidewalk. "The kids said anything?" she asked. "Bits and pieces," Darrow replied. "They were sedated often, but some remember seeing big cats in cages and crates with holes. One said he heard someone say they'd be going on a boat. We believed they were going to be smuggled out via cargo ship, disguised as part of a legal animal shipment." Natalie closed her eyes, the image hitting her all at once. Tiny bodies packed like cargo. Children who had once played duck, duck, goose, now rendered silent. Sedated passengers in an illegal trade route. "Who didn't make it?" she said, almost to herself. "Jalen and Mila." Darrow nodded, solemn. "We've confirmed it. Jalen was struck by the smuggler's truck during the initial chaos. Mila had an asthma attack in the early days of captivity. No medication. No chance." Natalie swallowed hard. "I saw her pink backpack on the boat," she whispered. "Weighted with rocks." "We believe the smugglers discarded the bags only recently," Darrow said. "They wanted to throw off the investigation, make it look like the kids had drowned or run off. A false trail. It worked for a while." "Until Buckner's net found them," Natalie murmured. "Until someone made a mistake," Darrow corrected. "Every criminal network stumbles eventually. Yours was noticing details others missed. That receipt. That feather." "The feather," she echoed, reaching instinctively for her pocket, only to find it empty. Of course, it had been lost during the struggle. "Do we know what kind of bird it belonged to?" "Scarlet macaw," Darrow answered. "Native to Central and South America. Illegal to import without special permits. One of the most expensive birds on the black market. Quintana was using willow pines as a staging point. It all tracks. They were going to traffic the children the same way they moved the animals," Natalie said. "Disguised, drugged, treated like property." Darrow didn't respond immediately. He rubbed his forehead, then leaned forward. "We'll never know the full extent of what was planned. But we do know one thing: you stopped it. You risked your life to go back there, to dig for the truth. We would have never found the processing plant without your intel. The children owe you their lives." "I didn't save them," Natalie said, her voice cracking. "I wasn't with them when it happened. I wasn't brave. I couldn't give up. Not until I knew." "That's bravery," Darrow said quietly. "Staying in the fight when you're broken." A soft knock came at the door. Officer Laney stepped in, holding a small object wrapped in evidence paper. "This was recovered from the warehouse. We thought Miss Kerns should see it." Natalie reached for the package, peeling the edge of the plastic. Inside was a tiny pink hair clip, shaped like a butterfly, its edges slightly bent. She pressed it to her chest. "Zoe Fernandez," she whispered. "She wore this every day. She's one of the children we rescued," Laney said, her tone warm. "She asked for you earlier. Wants to know when she can see her teacher." Natalie smiled faintly through her tears. "Soon. Tell her I'll be there soon." Darrow stood, offering his hand. "Come with me. Let's go see the kids again. They've been asking if you're still here." She took his hand and stood, her legs trembling slightly but stronger than before. As they walked back down the hallway, passing by weary but grateful families and exhausted officers, Natalie felt a shift deep in her chest. Not closure, because there could be no closure for Jalen or Mila, but something close. Something like hope. She stepped into the room where the children were resting, their small forms curled in blankets, IVs taped to their arms, some dozing, some sitting up quietly. When they saw her, their faces lit up. "Ms. Kerns, you came back. I knew you would." Natalie knelt beside them, gathering them into her arms, one by one, their voices rising in a chorus of relief and love. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring: lawsuits, investigations, the long road of trauma recovery. But for now, in this room, with these children safe in her embrace, she felt something return to her: purpose, maybe even peace. As the hours passed within the hushed walls of the Eden Hill police station, the chaos of the morning slowly gave way to a quieter, more sobering rhythm. Natalie Kerns remained in the children's room, now dimly lit with soft fluorescent lights, as the rescued 13 lay scattered on cots and blankets provided by the Red Cross, some curled up in exhaustion, others sitting close to their parents, clinging tightly, as if letting go meant they'd disappear again. The presence of their teacher, their familiar Miss Kerns, grounded them in a way even their families couldn't fully manage, and Natalie knew it. She sat on the floor, back against the wall, arms draped around two of her students who had fallen asleep beside her, Alina Wexler and Caleb Denton, each still wearing the same clothes from the day of their disappearance, now slightly oversized, the fabric stretched and dirty, but somehow still intact. Her fingers gently brushed Alina's hair, tucking it behind her ear as her other hand held Caleb's trembling fingers. Even in sleep, he sought safety. From the hallway, the muffled sounds of low conversation continued: officers updating reports, detectives fielding media calls, parents crying softly with counselors. Outside, the rising sun painted streaks of amber across the horizon, casting long golden bars through the windows and bathing the station in a quiet kind of hope. Officer Laney returned to the room, carrying a clipboard and a folded flannel blanket. She crouched beside Natalie, laying the blanket gently across her legs. "You need rest," she said softly, trying not to wake the children. "Even an hour. We'll take care of them." "I can't sleep," Natalie whispered, her voice hoarse. "Not yet. The medical team says most of the kids are stable now," Laney said, her eyes scanning the room. "The sedatives they were given are metabolizing properly. No signs of lasting physical harm." "Physical," Natalie repeated, eyes fixed on the far wall. "But what about everything else?" "That's going to take time," Laney admitted. "But the hardest part is over. They're safe. And so are you." Natalie nodded, but said nothing. Her mind kept circling back to the words she'd overheard in the warehouse. The names of the two children who hadn't survived: Mila Patel, Jalen Washington. Sweet Mila, with her neatly labeled folders and soft voice, always helping classmates without being asked. And Jalen, bold, energetic, obsessed with space and dinosaurs, always volunteering to be line leader even when it wasn't his turn. Natalie had loved all her students, but some carved deeper places in her heart, and now those places ached with an emptiness that could never be filled. She felt a presence near the door and looked up to see Detective Darrow step inside. His expression was grim, but beneath it, something else: resolution. He motioned for her to join him in the hallway. With great care, she eased herself away from the children, tucking the blanket more tightly around them before rising. She followed him out, rubbing her arms against the sudden chill of the hallway AC. "We've confirmed everything you told us," he began. The shrimp facility in Corpus Christi was rigged to be a holding point. The smugglers intended to move the children onto a cargo ship this weekend. They would have been gone. "Do we know where they were going?" she asked. "Multiple locations," he said. "Guatemala, Honduras." One boy had a tag on his clothing that led to a falsified identity and an adoption scam. They weren't just going to disappear, they were going to be rebranded, resold. Quintana had connections in 4 countries. Natalie leaned against the wall, eyes shut for a moment. "And the bodies?" she asked. "Ms. Bryce and Coach Meyer?" Darrow nodded solemnly. "Bellamy took us to the site this morning. About 20 miles south, in the desert near a dried-up irrigation basin. They were buried side by side. No attempt to hide them well. Quick job. We're coordinating with their families now." Natalie let out a shaky breath, then whispered, "They died trying to protect the kids, didn't they?" "We believe so," Darrow replied. "There were signs of a struggle. Defensive wounds. They fought, probably refused to cooperate when the children were taken." "I should have been with them," Natalie said quietly. "Maybe I could have." "Don't," Darrow interrupted gently. "You did what none of us could. You brought the children back. If you had been with the others, we might have lost you too." Natalie nodded, her throat thick. "The parents, do they know yet?" "About Mila and Jalen." "We're telling them now," he said. "We're handling it with counselors. It won't be easy, but they deserve the truth." She leaned back against the wall, arms crossed over her chest. "What happens now? Quintana will face federal charges. Human trafficking, animal trafficking, conspiracy, attempted smuggling, and murder. Travis Rowland and Conrad Bellamy are both in custody. Bellamy's lawyer is negotiating, but he's not walking free. As for the rest of the network, we've raided 3 more sites since yesterday. Warehouses, shipping fronts. The FBI is fully on board now. And the children? Each family will be assigned a support team, psychologists, trauma counselors, caseworkers. They'll need long-term care. We're coordinating with the school district, too. Re-enrollment plans, academic support. They'll need everything." "And me?" she asked. "I'm not even employed anymore." "We'll make sure you're protected," Darrow said. "And recognized. I've already spoken to the state attorney. You'll be cleared of any suspicion publicly. A full exoneration." "That won't erase what people think," she said bitterly. "People will always talk." "Yes," Darrow agreed. "But they'll also see the truth. And those kids, you'll always be their Miss Kerns. That's something they'll never forget." She nodded slowly, then looked down the hallway toward the reunion room. "Can I stay with them a little longer?" "As long as you like," Darrow said. "But try to rest. You've done enough for now." Natalie returned to the room, stepping quietly between sleeping bodies and soft whispers. A few of the kids had fallen asleep on one another, their arms draped across shoulders, small fingers gripping tightly, as if anchoring each other to the safety of the present. She sat near the corner, propping herself against the wall again, legs stretched out in front of her, letting her body finally sag under the crushing weight of adrenaline, relief, and grief. Her eyes drifted shut, the echo of tiny voices and the warm buzz of the heater surrounding her like a lullaby. Outside, morning came to Eden Hill. News vans arrived. Reporters were turned away. The town began to stir with the weight of what had happened, what had nearly been lost, and what had been miraculously saved. And in the heart of the station, 13 children slept safely at last. The sun had fully risen over Eden Hill by the time Natalie Kerns awoke, still slumped against the wall of the station's makeshift restroom, the soft, warm weight of a child's head resting on her thigh. She blinked slowly, her body stiff and aching from sleeping on the floor, but the sight that met her eyes made the discomfort fade instantly. Alina still lay beside her, her tiny fingers wrapped around Natalie's hand as though afraid to let go even in sleep, and across the room, Caleb was curled up next to Zoe, both of them breathing evenly under a shared blanket. The buzz of fluorescent lights hummed above, mingling with the occasional murmur of an officer passing outside the door or a parent quietly weeping down the hall. Natalie gently disentangled her fingers from Alina's and stood, stretching her sore limbs as carefully as she could. A nurse entered the room moments later, carrying a tray of crackers, juice boxes, and small fruit cups. She smiled when she saw Natalie awake. "They slept through the whole night," she said softly. "A few woke up briefly, but calmed down as soon as they saw you were still here. You've been their anchor." Natalie offered a tired smile. "They're stronger than they look." "So are you," the nurse said, setting the tray on a nearby table. "We're going to start bringing in pediatric trauma specialists later today. The next few weeks will be full of evaluations and therapy sessions. Will they be staying at the station? No, the nurse replied. Temporary foster families are being coordinated or, where possible, with relatives. But for today, this is still their sanctuary. As the nurse exited, Detective Darrow appeared at the doorway, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. He handed it to Natalie without a word. Thought you could use this. You're a hero, she murmured, taking a grateful sip. Any news? We've got full cooperation from Bellamy, he said, stepping into the room and keeping his voice low. He's mapped out everything. Routes, delivery sites, contacts. He's still going to prison, but he'll do so with a lighter sentence if it brings down the rest of Quintana's network. And Travis. Stonewalling. But it doesn't matter. We don't need him to talk. Natalie nodded slowly, then glanced around at the children. Have all the parents been informed about what happened? Yes. The media's been briefed too, with limited details. We're controlling the narrative until formal indictments are announced. Your name's been cleared, publicly and permanently. I never cared about public opinion, Natalie said, her voice tight. I just wanted the truth out. For them. You did that, Darrow said simply. And more. He hesitated before continuing. There's something you should know. One of the men caught during the warehouse raid is talking. He says the shrimp facility wasn't the end point. The children were originally meant to be smuggled through a private port south of Corpus, hidden in livestock shipments. He claims another group of children, unrelated to your class, was successfully transported a month earlier. We're investigating now. Natalie's stomach turned. So it's bigger than even we thought. Much, Darrow confirmed. But you exposed it. Now we have a way in, a reason for the feds to go deep. Will they find those other kids? We'll try, he said, not promising what he couldn't guarantee. Natalie felt a deep, quiet fury rise inside her. A month ago, she'd been a schoolteacher planning summer crafts and field day events. Now she was standing in the middle of a nationwide human trafficking ring, holding the weight of children's trauma in her arms. I want to help, she said, with the investigation, however I can. You're not law enforcement, Darrow began. No, she cut in, but I know how these people operate now. I know what details matter. I noticed things no one else did. You said so yourself. Darrow studied her face for a moment. We're forming a joint task force, he finally said. When you're ready, I'll get you a meeting. Natalie nodded, her mind already spinning through everything she'd seen, every scrap of paper, every faint tire track, every object out of place. She wouldn't rest until they'd rooted out every last part of the system that tried to swallow her kids. Later that morning, families began arriving again, this time in scheduled blocks, escorted by counselors, accompanied by support staff. Some carried balloons. Others came with nothing but hope and prayers. One by one, the children were gently woken and reunited with their parents. The hugs were tighter this time, the tears heavier, the gratitude nearly overwhelming. Natalie stood quietly to the side, watching each reunion unfold like a miracle stitched together from nightmare. She saw Zoe's mother crumple to the floor sobbing, clutching her daughter like a lifeline. She saw Alina's father, tall, usually stoic, break down completely as he lifted his daughter into his arms. Caleb's mother ran barefoot across the hallway tile, abandoning her shoes in the rush to reach him. And then the room was almost empty. Just Natalie, the nurse, and the quiet hum of a vacuum in the distance. Darrow returned once more, holding a clipboard this time. That's the last of them, he said. You've done more in 2 days than most people manage in a lifetime. Natalie's voice was low but steady. What happens to the ones we lost? Mila and Jalen will be honored. We've scheduled private memorials. The district wants to name scholarships after them. Their families have asked for your presence." "Of course," she said. "Anything they need." "We've also recovered more of their personal belongings," he added, handing her a clear evidence bag. Inside was Mila's inhaler, cracked and empty, and a small toy spaceship belonging to Jalen. Natalie accepted it with reverence, her heart squeezing tight. "Do the other kids know?" "Some. We haven't told them everything. It'll come in stages, with the help of child psychologists." She nodded, eyes glistening. "What they've been through, it'll stay with them. But they're strong. I saw that." "They're strong because of you," Darrow said quietly. "You held on when everyone else had let go." Natalie glanced at the now empty room. "I didn't save them all," she whispered. "But you saved 13, he replied. "And now you're helping to stop it from happening again." Natalie stepped out into the hallway, the station now bustling with new energy, teams of investigators, social workers, agents. The sun was high in the sky, casting everything in sharp, honest light. And for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could finally breathe again. The days that followed were a blur of interviews, debriefings, and media inquiries. Natalie Kerns found herself at the center of a whirlwind she had never anticipated. Reporters camped outside the Eden Hill Police Department, their cameras and microphones ready to capture any snippet of information. Inside, the atmosphere was equally intense. Federal agents, local law enforcement, and child welfare officials worked tirelessly to piece together the full scope of the trafficking operation. Natalie was interviewed multiple times, each session delving deeper into the details she had observed, the layout of the warehouse, the conversations she had overheard, the behaviors of the perpetrators. Despite the exhaustion that clung to her like a second skin, she remained resolute, determined to provide every piece of information that could aid in the investigation. The children, now under the care of specialized trauma counselors, began the slow process of healing. Natalie visited them daily, her presence a comforting constant in their disrupted lives. She read to them, played games, and simply sat with them, offering silent support. Each small smile, each moment of laughter, was a victory against the darkness they had endured. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Victor Quintana and his associates gained momentum. The evidence collected was overwhelming: ledgers detailing transactions, shipping manifests, and testimonies from those involved. The public outcry was immense, with communities rallying to support the victims and demand justice. Natalie, once a quiet schoolteacher, was now hailed as a hero. Yet, she remained humble, deflecting praise and focusing on the children's recovery. One afternoon, as she sat in the playroom with Zoe and Caleb, Detective Darrow entered, his expression serious. He motioned for Natalie to join him in the hallway. "We've uncovered more," he began, handing her a file. "Another facility, similar setup, in Louisiana. We believe it's connected." Natalie flipped through the documents, her heart sinking. "How many children?" she asked. "We're not sure yet," Darrow replied. "But your insights have been invaluable. We'd like you to consult on this case as well." She nodded, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders once more. "I'll do whatever I can." As the investigation expanded, Natalie's role evolved. She worked closely with law enforcement, offering her perspective and helping to identify patterns. Her dedication inspired others, and soon a task force was established, focusing on dismantling trafficking networks across state lines. Despite the emotional toll, Natalie remained steadfast. She knew the importance of their work and the lives that depended on it. One evening, as she prepared to leave the station, she received a call from Mila's parents. They invited her to a memorial service in honor of their daughter. The ceremony was intimate, filled with heartfelt tributes and memories. Natalie spoke, her voice trembling as she recounted Mila's kindness and spirit. The community support was palpable, a testament to the impact Mila had made in her short life. In the weeks that followed, similar services were held for Jalen and the two teachers who had lost their lives. Each gathering served as a reminder of the tragedy and the resilience of those left behind. Natalie attended them all, offering solace and solidarity. As the legal cases progressed, convictions were secured and sentences were handed down. The network that had caused so much pain was being dismantled piece by piece. Natalie continued her advocacy, speaking at conferences and working with organizations dedicated to preventing human trafficking. Her experiences lent authenticity to her message, and she became a powerful voice for change. Through it all, she remained connected to the children, celebrating their milestones and supporting their journeys. The scars of their ordeal would never fully fade, but together they forged a path forward, rooted in hope and healing. 6 months later, the crisp autumn air swept through Eden Hill, turning the leaves brilliant shades of gold and crimson as the town began to settle into its new rhythm, one shaped not by fear or suspicion, but by resilience and recovery. The Greenhorn Hills Elementary School had reopened its doors after months of renovation and reflection, and on a chilly October morning, a small crowd gathered near the newly planted memorial garden at the edge of the playground. Natalie Kerns stood quietly among the group, her coat buttoned against the breeze, watching as students, parents, teachers, and law enforcement assembled to honor those they had lost and those they had found. A bronze plaque now stood between two young maple trees, bearing the names of Mila Patel, Jalen Washington, Eleanor Bryce, and Coach Lucas Meyer. 4 names etched in metal, forever remembered by the school and the town. Surrounding the memorial were beds of pink and blue flowers, planted by the surviving children as part of their therapy sessions. Natalie stepped forward when called, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. She spoke of courage, not just her own, but the quiet strength of 15 children who had faced something unimaginable and somehow endured. She spoke of her fellow teachers, of their bravery and love, and of the need to never grow numb to the signs that something is wrong. When she finished, the crowd remained silent for a long moment, the only sound the rustling leaves and the quiet sniffles of those wiping tears. Then came applause, not loud or celebratory, but reverent and full of gratitude. After the ceremony, parents approached her one by one. Some hugged her tightly, whispering their thanks, while others simply nodded, their eyes full of words they couldn't yet speak. Natalie didn't need to hear them. She understood. In the weeks leading up to this day, the children had returned to class gradually, each at their own pace. Some still flinched at sudden noises. Others carried comfort objects or required breaks when anxiety hit. But they were here, learning, smiling, building friendships again. Natalie had chosen not to return to full-time teaching, though she remained active in the school, mentoring new educators and guiding the trauma support program now embedded in the district structure. Instead, her work had taken a new shape. With the support of Detective Darrow and several nonprofits, she had helped launch a national training initiative focused on early detection of trafficking patterns in schools, parks, and community centers. She traveled often, speaking to law enforcement and educators, blending her first-hand experience with practical guidance. Though the travel was taxing, she found purpose in every town, every seminar, every new set of eyes she helped open. The joint task force she had aided in creating was now operational in 5 states, and the arrests continued to climb. Dozens of children had been recovered since, thanks to tips inspired by the Eden Hill case. Natalie kept photos of the 13 children she'd helped save pinned on a corkboard above her writing desk at home, each one a reminder that even the smallest voice, the faintest cry for help, deserved to be heard. One late evening, while reviewing training materials for a seminar in Dallas. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Zoe's mother, a photo of Zoe on her bike, smiling broadly, her hair whipping in the wind as she rode with two friends. Below it, the message read, "She still talks about you every night. You gave her life back." Natalie stared at the image for a long time, tears stinging her eyes before she pressed the photo to her chest. That night, as she lay in bed, the events of those harrowing weeks replayed in fragments. The farm, the barn, the feather, the cage, the darkness of the truck, the whisper of Mila's name, the flash of Jalen's toy spaceship. But alongside those memories were new ones. Elias's laugh during a story session, Caleb's proud grin when he read aloud again for the first time, Zoe's spontaneous hug during a campus visit. These were the memories she chose to carry forward. In the quiet hours before dawn, she wrote a letter, one she would never send, addressed to Mila and Jalen. In it, she promised to keep fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves, to remain vigilant, and to protect others with every bit of strength she had left. She ended it with a single line, "You were loved, and you still are." Months later, that letter would become the final chapter in a book she was encouraged to publish, a memoir not of heroism, but of witness, truth, and the desperate need for attention to the overlooked details. It was called The Feather Under the Door. It became a bestseller not because of sensationalism, but because people finally understood how easily monsters could hide in plain sight. Natalie never saw herself as a savior. She had been scared, uncertain, and nearly silenced. But she had chosen to look deeper, to ask questions, to listen when things didn't feel right. And that choice had saved 13 lives. On the anniversary of the children's rescue, the town held a quiet candlelight vigil. Natalie lit hers last, standing before the memorial, the breeze catching her flame and making it dance. Behind her, the 13 children stood hand in hand, now taller, stronger, survivors in every sense of the word. Natalie turned to them and smiled. They smiled back. And as the night deepened and stars bloomed across the sky, Eden Hill stood not as the town where a class had vanished, but as the place where hope had returned, because one woman refused to stop searching, even when the rest of the world had already given up. If this story moved you, make sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next mystery we uncover. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from right now? And if you believe in hope, justice, or the power of a second chance, leave a comment below that simply says, "God help the lost."